All right, you are now tuned into the Rotated Views podcast. I am your host, Jimmy Lee Velez. I'm here with Goose.
What's up?
Heck, Manny, and Gabe. All right, episode 104, Stubbornness. In this episode, the crew talks about their most important compromises learned throughout their lives. We cover topics that range from pride, our egos, persistence in life, goal attainment, tips for the stubborn person, and much more. We wrap the episode up with quotes by Anthony J. D'Angelo and John C. Maxwell. Guys, if you're new, thank you for joining us. Don't forget to download and subscribe. We drop a new episode every Tuesday morning for your listening pleasure. We kick things off with a definition from dictionary.com, and we define stubborn. They define it as unreasonably obstinate, obstinately unmoving, fixed or set in purpose or opinion, resolute, obstinately maintained, as a course of action difficult to manage or suppress. All right, cool. So I found this talking about stubbornness. Obviously, that's the topic. I found this article from Success.com titled 7 Compromising Tips for the Stubborn Person. And just, right off the top, they just talk about compromise has become a dirty word. After all, you don't want your quality or safety compromised, but in business and life partnerships, compromise can be crucial for survival. Say you want to spend the entire marketing budget on social media while your partner prefers traditional print ads. The resolution might be to divide the money and have a presence in both. Or what if you want to take a trip to Costa Rica, but your spouse wants to go to Aruba? Maybe you decide this time, but he or she chooses next year. So does that make sense with the compromise thing? I guess being stubborn, obviously, that's a component of being stubborn is not being able to compromise. You're just very
one track.
Yes, exactly. So it says, are you stubborn or headstrong? These tips for becoming a better compromiser we gleaned from a bevy of expert sources. So, number 1, nurture the relationship with your partner by showing interest in his or her life, like his or her greyhound puppy or her son's knack for tennis. Keep communication flowing so that when hard conversations roll around, each of you understands the other person's point of view. So I guess that this whole thing with, compromising, they're trying to make it seem, initially when you say compromise, they're trying to say like it's a dirty word or it sounds like a dirty word in business because it looks like you're basically not getting your way. A lot of times in partnerships that happens when it's a split, when the company's split by percentages by multiple like angel investors, for example, where they have. You might have started the business or had the idea. For example, if I had an idea of starting Uber and it was 100% mine, but I just didn't have the financial, backing, I went and sought out for it. Now, these people are dropping millions of dollars. They're taking away percentages, obviously, because they want a return on their investment financially. And
so on the back end, you have to hear what they have to say in order to make any decisions.
Exactly. So then I've seen with my own experiences, people that I know personally lose their own business even though they still own it. So they ended up losing majority. They're not the majority shareholder, I should say. So they ended up being, it's like a 60-40. So 2 people came in at 30%. They took 40, but when you you can't make an entire decision unless you get 3 yeses.
Wow.
So it gets crazy. Now it's like, this is something that you started. This was like your own thing. But when you're making a decision, you have to actually now go through 2 other people. And how we kind of do the, Rotated Views podcast, it's mainly, majority rules when we try to decide on something. Or like our family, every year we do a Philadelphia Phillies team VC family Philadelphia Phillies game, whatever. Majority rules on the date, right? Okay. So obviously it's the summer and everyone's on vacation. It's around about the time that we go, or whatever. You just have weddings. There's a lot of stuff going on. So there's over 25 people going. Of course, that one single date is not going to work for every single person. Sure. So someone around there is going to either compromise or just not go. Yeah. Does that make sense? So it's kind of like the same thing. So if you get a majority rules, you could be totally against it, right? Like, let's just say the color of the outside of your business is the brick and mortar business, right? Is pink, and that you like, it's everything you've done for this business has been the color pink for whatever reason why you chose this color. These two partners come in and say pink is terrible for this kind of business. Let's use a more neutral color, and we're going to go with gray, right? So then, and they're 60% now. So 30 and 30 is 60, and you're 40. The majority rules. So now your entire business has now been painted. Your pink has been taken away, and now it's gray. That's kind of the stuff that you have to go through. I mean, I know that's like a very high level, like over the top example, and kind of basic at the same time with talking about paint color. But in
you
business,
can't even make basic decisions like that without consulting other people.
So, okay, so then you got to think about, like, if you are a stubborn person, you're like, no, I'm going to do this way, I'm going to do this way, and now you find yourself in that position. That's when compromise has to happen. Actually, you don't even have a choice. Like, you have to bend.
You have to go with it,
right? So it's very interesting. So the first one was about the relationship, about, you know, your significant other. Sure. Anyone who's in some level of relationship, you're gonna quickly realize, you know how the old saying of opposites attract. I don't know how sure or how certain that is, but you guys definitely have some differences, right? Mm-hmm. So you definitely, and it's kind of like they fill the voids,
sure.
Or, you know, you guys balance each other out for the most part. This is all just generally speaking. You definitely are compromising, and it's not a negative thing, and that, I think that's what they're trying to say. It's like a dirty word, but me compromising on, you know, they're saying, you know, vacation of Aruba versus Costa Rica was the example they gave. Yeah. I mean, dude, we're going to Aruba or Costa Rica. I'm excited as heck. Right. You know what I mean? Like, that's my compromise. I take it.
You have kids.
Or you just take separate vacations.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of stuff. I mean, you could also get into like the topic of just settling, right? Sure. Like so for example, me and my wife, when we're looking for houses, we were talking about specific school districts, right? Mm-hmm. So then you get to looking so long, and when you're just getting started out, the average person, you know, your budget isn't the craziest thing. The average person, sure. Obviously there's exceptions. And our budget was what it was, and it was very slim pickings for where we wanted to go. Mm-hmm. It gets crazy, though, because when you start looking for so long, you almost start to give in. I'm like, well, we can get, you know how many houses we could have gotten, just not in the school district that we wanted to, but we could have already had a house. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And we were in those moments where we had to make a decision, and I would like to say that we stuck to our guns kind of thing, and we didn't compromise in that, you know, scenario. Yeah. Although we had a compromise on the size of our house, right? Because we wanted to be in a specific school district. Mm-hmm. So if we went into another school district, we could have maybe gotten more square footage or whatever the case is. Mm. That's a very real estate general, you know, thing to say. It's, you know, you got to pick or choose. Or you watch these shows all the time when they're trying to find, you know, on HGTV, like the sell it or list it, and the one's trying to keep them at the house that they're at, and the other one, and the spouse, the other significant other, is trying to move whatever closer to the city or further out from the city, a better school district or whatever it is, and you quickly find, you know, that there's a lot of compromises that have to be done, right? Property Brothers is another good example where they show people the potential of basically a fixer-upper and what it could be, and people are shocked to think like, oh, this is like your requirements or your request, what you wanted on a specific house, and they take them to this bomb house. It's beautiful, it's gorgeous, it's perfectly decorated, blah blah blah. And let's just say your budget is like whatever, $500,000. They show them like a $1 million house. You know what I mean? And they're saying you can buy a $350,000 and drop, you know, $150,000 into it, and we can make it look like this. That's the compromise you're going to need if you don't have $1 million. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's all about, like, you know, it's just an example of compromising. But it doesn't need to be a negative thing. You know what I'm trying to say?
Sure.
It's not settling per se. Okay, so number 2, don't start negotiations during a crisis or when stress and tempers flare. Wait for calm conditions. Negotiations. Yeah, I mean, that kind of goes along with what I was saying before. However, now you're throwing the spin of a crisis. You're making decisions when emotionally or mentally you're probably not 100% there. A good example is Dave Ramsey always talks about the loss of a loved one. Never make major life changes during the time of mourning. Okay. So he's saying, like, a lot of people, they just do it thinking that that's going to fix that void or that pain. So a loved one dies, for example, and they just go out and to fix that, they're just going to go out and sell everything because they don't want any memories of this person anymore because it's too painful to walk into a room they go out and buy a new house or a new car or whatever, and at a very high and emotional state where if the conditions weren't that's something that you can't change. But he's basically saying you got to let it ride out for at least a year, 6 months to 12 months, and then make decisions and bounce them off other people. Because sometimes you don't even know that you're not even right still. You're not ready yet. You think you're ready, but someone's like, dude, think about what you're doing. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. That's making a decision, not necessarily a crisis, but like in a very high emotional state. So there you go. That's number 2. Number 3, before any discussion, know what you want. Also know what you... Well, isn't that being a stubborn person anyway? You know what you want. Before any discussion, know what you want. Also know what you won't budge on. Never go against your conscience or compromise your values.
I mean, I guess it goes with, like, you can't compromise on something if you haven't personally made a decision about whatever the situation is.
Well, it's like buying a car. Mm-hmm. You know what you want, and they're trying to sell you something else.
Right.
Or
if you go in there like, I'm just buying a car. Like,
you go in, I want a black truck with red leather interior, and they have a white truck with blue leather interior. Like, oh no, but this is equivalent. They're trying to sell it on you, but no, it's not what you want.
Yeah.
So is that being stubborn, or is that them just trying to compromise it?
Well, no, I mean, I think that's a combination. They're also salesmen. They also try to make money.
Well, yeah, right.
But it happened to me. I found the car that I wanted online, and
offline.
Yeah, and I went to this place. I confirmed the appointment. I had made an appointment with this guy to take a test drive. Blah blah blah. I'm like, hey, I'm coming up. Were we still good for 4 o'clock? I don't remember time. This was like 10, 15 years ago. He's like, yep, come on down. Blah blah blah. I get there, and the car was sold like 3 days before. So I'm talking to the guy. I'm like, first of all, it's still on your website. Number 1, you need to update your website. Number 2, I actually don't even live anywhere around here. I live an hour away. So I called the guy 2 days ago, I emailed the guy 2 days ago, and I called to confirm this morning. It's 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and this car was sold 3 days ago. Not like 30 minutes ago. 3 days ago. So I was like, can I talk to a manager? I'm just trying to understand. Maybe there's a misunderstanding. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah. But yeah, so it happens like that, and the manager basically did put the blame on the other guy, but was trying to sell me on a 2-door coupe when I wanted a 4-door something else. You know what I'm saying? And I'm like, dude, that's not even that's not even close. First of all, you're even missing the whole point. I'm like, it was like he didn't even care. He was just like, whatever, I'm just, whatever, that guy's a goofball. Yeah, it's his fault. Anyway, do you like this little 2-door coupe? That's strange. I'll never forget him saying it. I'm like, no, dude, that's 2 doors. And I walked away. I said, that's a 2-door coupe, and I walked away.
But hold on, talking about being stubborn. It's okay to be stubborn about some things. Absolutely. And I think that's what number 3 is talking about. When know what you want, and don't make any concessions, don't budge on certain things. I'm at the point, in a couple big purchases, I bought a house based off price, just because it was based off price. It wasn't in the ideal school district, so I budged on that.
Yeah.
And full circle, 5 to 7 years later, you're kicking yourself in the butt like, man, why did I do that? Why didn't I get the house with the extra bedroom? Because you budge to make that concession, and it comes around and always, not all the time, but it usually kicks you right in the ass when you say, damn, I shouldn't have done that. So in certain aspects now, if I want something and there's a certain list, that list I'll stick to it just because I know, after the new wears off, those things that you conceded on are gonna be like, man, I should have got that. Mm-hmm. You never want to go back and be like, I shoulda. Shouldn't regret those type of decisions.
Buyer's remorse also, right?
But yeah, that's a little bit different. That's just a person.
That's going and buying a BMW when I could afford a Ford. I was like, man, how the hell am I going to pay for this? I don't know
about this. But people do it with like basic stuff, not even major purchases, like even small stuff. for example, like buying a shed, like, oh, and they just bought a shed, even if they needed the shed, but they bought one maybe that was under what they should have probably got, like a cheaper version, or a version it was excessive. They didn't really need it.
Yeah.
And so they're they want to literally return it before they even get home. They're feeling like remorseful, like, oh my God, what did I just do? Like that's, but there's people who do. I know somebody who's like that with everything. It's kind of tough to watch because they just beat themselves up.
Talk about stubborn.
Like at lunch.
Knowing damn well they should turn around. It doesn't feel right. Right? As soon as you pick it up or you're doing, you know it doesn't feel right in your gut. But you're like, I gotta own it now. I bought it. It's like, no, man, you can still hit the
pride.
The stop button. Yeah,
that's
your pride.
ego.
Pride, ego.
That's all ego.
Absolutely.
But the one part to like piggyback on what you're saying about like just knowing what you want. Also, it's saying not compromising your values, right? So then, I heard a story a long time ago about a local auto body shop, right? That had a mechanic, a young mechanic. He was a kid working for them. Well, a kid. Quickly realized that this guy was like running some like scam. What was happening was this guy was inspecting cars and all kinds of stuff and not being truthful basically as to what was being sold or what was wrong with the cars. Okay. And then it was like he got hired out. I forget the specifics. Long story short, what was being sold, what wasn't under the hood kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And I don't even know what the exact things were, replacing like parts with used car parts and then selling them as if it was a brand new. Yeah, like just crazy stuff. And I don't even know how true the story is, but it was like he didn't compromise on, he's like, no, I can't work like this. I can't provide a level of craftsmanship that I'm trying to do. And then, it being sold as something totally different.
Well, I mean, that's a different, that's a level of integrity more than it is, like, being stubborn on value.
Yeah. So, I mean, it gets all, like, there's just certain things, you hear it all the time in, like, the music industry, where someone's super talented, they get in it because they love singing or they love producing music or love doing what they're doing, and then they're compromising their values in content, right? So now they're singing about stuff that they wouldn't really sing about. But they're being driven by a label or someone else to, no, this is what's hot, this is what's in, this is what sells, this is what you have to do. Also, this is how you need to dress, this is where you need to be. So now you're compromising all kinds of things, multiple things. So imagine that. Basically, they're molding you to someone you're not. And you see it all the time. I mean, you see somebody win American Idol and how plain Jane they are, and then all of a sudden it's like, this totally different person like 2 months later after their whatever they won it's crazy.
That's the record company molding them into whatever the current style is.
Right. Okay, so number 4, pick your arguments and realize you don't always have to be right. Yeah, I mean that's a tough one. I was huge on that, man. A big knucklehead. That's tough. Sometimes that's not as easy even now, even knowing that you probably are right. But it's not saying that you're not right. It's saying that you don't have to be right. It's like just saying, dude,
let it go. Agree to disagree.
Yeah. Or not even just it's not even worth it. Like the person's just going to keep fighting, or it could be two stubborn people, right? Sure. Fighting each other or arguing about something. Yeah. Like I know I'm right and you're saying, no, I'm right, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, dude, this is literally not, they can't even get to a agree to disagree. There's angry.
Right, it's just anger and just walk away. Somebody has to walk away.
But in a stubbornness, not to get off topic, but in stubbornness, could there be a point of ignorance?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I bet you there's a lot of people who know they're wrong and because they're stubborn, like, no, you're going to just roll with it until, no, damn well they're wrong.
Like a lying person? You hear that getting rolled up into a lie and it gets bigger and bigger and you're staring at them. All right, so they're saying, like, oh, X, Y, and Z, they're trying to explain like a fight or something, right?
Yeah.
Oh, this happened and you were there and you watched it and you're hearing this enhanced story. Going on. And like, oh yeah, and then what happened? And some more elaborate made up stuff keep happening. You see someone
just you egg them on to hear what the heck else they're
just to watch this person just like, dude, this guy's ridiculous.
Where are you coming from?
And they just bury themselves in just lies and like, I mean, I think there's like a level of, I don't even know if it's, I think that's beyond stubbornness. That's like a whole other thing, but it's actually kind of entertaining. But yeah, I mean, I think that's pretty straightforward. You don't always have to be right. Number 5, be willing to change. Then prove you've changed by acting on the resolution as agreed. That's tough.
Yes and no.
It depends. Because be willing to change, then it's like saying, like, don't always compromise. So if you're, I guess what it's saying, if you're willing to compromise, you're willing to do this change. Don't do it with the grudge.
Yeah.
Like, oh, yeah, well, I'm doing this because I have to. You know what I mean? Like that kind of thing. Or you're at Aruba and like, Costa Rica would have been way better. While you're at Aruba. You know what I'm saying? It's like, that's like the kind of stuff.
At that point, too, it's like, why? Why do it? You're being stubborn just to bring it up. So why?
Yeah.
Why? It's over at this point.
At this point, you just want to start arguing.
Yeah.
Well,
that's all that is.
There's a bitterness about people, too. And like I said before, it's ego.
Yeah, that you didn't get your way.
Yeah, there's that pride thing. That,
you can't be resentful. And once a decision's made and you that resentment, you can't take it with you because that's pure evil there.
That is pure
super evil.
Mm-hmm. All right, so number 6, show appreciation for the other side. Compromising instead of continuing to fight is an admirable characteristic. So these all kind of tie into each other.
Hello.
And the last one, 7, treat a business partnership like a marriage. During disputes, be open to help from a mentor, accountant, or business coach. I guess that's just seeking some level of mentorship or coaching as you would in, I guess, any other relationship. And sometimes that's such a formal thing that we think, like, oh, I'm not going to marriage counseling. People literally think that. It might not necessarily be that. It might be just be talking to a friend. Yeah. That's seeking guidance. That's seeking counsel. You know what I'm saying? Or somebody who's been in that situation before. Obviously, you don't want, speaking to your single friend about marriage issue that you're having. Even though that person might have a great solution, you want to seek, it's like they're saying, proper mentorship and guidance. You could always talk to anybody who you want. Not necessarily sure if you want to act on what's being said.
Right.
Cool. All right, so there you have it. 7 compromising tips for a stubborn person. That was pretty good. Success Magazine, or Success.com. That was one of the most straightforward articles we had in a while.
That was a success.
That was pretty good. All right, cool. So, moving on. Question for the crew. What's the most important compromise you have made thus far?
Compromise.
Biggest compromise. And it might not be something that, like, massive, but it's just saying one of.
Not pushing for a third child. Me and my wife having a third kid. At 2, she put her foot down.
Yeah.
The second one I didn't force, but it was more forced than the first.
Yeah.
But the third one, she looked at me and was like, no. And I was like, okay, fine. 2 out of 3 ain't bad.
And now are you now to that opinion? Like there's no like remorse. Yeah,
I'm good. For a little bit, I was a little resentful. Like, 3 just always sound like a good number. 2, I didn't feel like it was enough.
It's hilarious.
Yeah, I just felt like 3 would be a perfect number.
Now, was that because you were one of 2? And you knew how it was raising with another child? Like, you didn't want your kids to be that way?
I felt like, well, my mom came from a very large family, 14 brothers and sisters. So she's, when you talk about being able to talk to somebody or mentorship or whatever, she always had a sounding board.
Yeah.
And for me, it was, my brother. And at the time, it was 4 years is a big difference from 18 to 14, 22 to 18. Yeah. There's a maturity level there. And even from when he was 21 to when I was 25 or had a kid, a house, it was different stages in life. And it's now that he's gotten to, I'm 32, he's going to be 28, that we were kind of on the same, playing field, so to speak. But I felt like, 3 would have been perfect. And she looked at me, and I felt like, you know what, you're right. And I'm finally to a point where my children are self-sufficient. Yeah. To where I was like, okay, to go backwards now at this point, like, I'm good. So,
you should try it.
Boy and a girl, I'm done. So, I compromised, and I think she forced the correct decision for the both of us.
Or use Heck's position, just unlimited.
No.
Yeah. My house is like the data, unlimited.
It's funny. I couldn't do that.
Nah, I compromised.
For me, it was definitely like having a pet. Growing up, we've always had 2 dogs. My wife, growing up, always had a dog or multiple dogs, a cat, same thing. And I don't know what it was to me. It was just kind of like your traditional, like, get married, get a house, have a kid, let's get a puppy or whatever.
Yeah.
In our case, it would have been a puppy. And I really thought she grew up with dogs that she was, might be, for this idea. Man, we saw some dogs and she fell in love. And I'm like, yeah, man, I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, not right now. It's not the right time. We have a lot going on. This was before James, but we were just about to get married. Like everything was happening this year. So this is like 2012. And we're like, this is cool. We're going to pet shops. Just like in the evening when we were like leave somewhere or come home from, something for the wedding or wedding planning, we would just like make a pit stop at the pet store or whatever, Target, something. Well, the pet store, we stopped at for whatever reason multiple times. I don't know if it was me trying to dream build or something. And we saw a couple like really cute, like beautiful dogs. I'm like, yo, this is great. And then we're going back and forth about even just, adopting one or getting. So the conversation was very fluid. Then all of a sudden it came time for it, and it was like, nope, she was not budging. She did not want a dog, blah, 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 blah. All these horror stories. Even I knew that, what it entailed. She just was not feeling it at all. And I was resistant. I'm like, wait, what are you talking about? Like, my son's missing out. Like, he needs that. Like, so what if he's missing? And at the end of the day, I saw what she was saying, and she knew what I was saying, but was very adamant about her decision. Mm-hmm. And then after a while, I started coming around. I'm like, you know what? We're having another baby. Again, here we go. I'm like, by this time, forget it. I'm good. And I'm very happy with that. It wasn't like it was like a forced thing. It was like she was very adamant about, she was sticking with her guns. And I was just like floating. I was like, oh, maybe we'll get something else or whatever. And now I'm just like, you know what? That is what it is right now, and we're both very happy with that decision. But it was like, wow, because I didn't even know. I guess the part that killed me was I thought she would also
should be right.
So I was super excited because we just in
your head you already
she
already had to say yes to it.
Yeah, we were like talking to friends who had adopted. We're going to pet stores, talking to them where they getting their.
So where did no come from? Out of left field.
Yeah. So,
but here's the thing for that. When you're when you're going through that decision, and you're being resistant. I know with me it was like, how long do you push before she caves? She says yes, and now she's resentful for the life of the dog. And I can only speak to that because my mom's like that. She said yes to a dog emotionally. She made a decision emotionally.
Yeah.
I got a dog in college. Was gonna give it away.
Yeah.
My mom became attached after a week. She was a puppy, beautiful, cute little dog.
Yeah.
Well, it's not now till 7-8 years later. She's still resentful.
Yeah.
Freaking dog, always cursing at the dog, always yelling at the dog. Still pisses in the house, and she's always screaming at it.
Yeah.
So now it's like she's still resentful. There's times she looks at her with like just malice in her eyes, like, "Oh, mom, relax. You got her." So that decision, there's definitely a fine line there. Where if you push too hard and they cave, you might be the one catching catching the rat.
Heat.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and I know my wife enough to know that if I could probably convince her, but I know I would pay for it on the back end.
Right.
That's your dog.
Yeah, that's your dog. I'm not taking this dog out to walk. You made a decision. We quote made this decision together. That's on you. You're feeding, but I'm not doing anything. So if I wanted to do something, go out. Can you take the dog out? Can you take the dog for a walk? Did you feed the dog? All that stuff, all out the window.
Well, she compromised, so she's allowing you to get the dog. Right. But guess what? All the responsibility falls on you.
Dude,
believe me, and I know
out.
that never works out. So to me, that's a quote compromise, but that's not a real
compromise.
So that happened to me with this last dog. I said, no, we're not getting a dog. I don't want the other dog. We don't have time for it. This, that, and the third. Me, that the mush that I am with 5 girls in the house, I caved, but I said, listen, you guys have to take care of this. Like, I don't care what time of day it is. You got to pick up, it's droppings, when it pees, whatever the heck is the case may be. Yeah, right.
How's that work, Mush?
It's not working so well because nobody cleans up the poop when it's out in the backyard. I have to still clean it up before I cut the grass. Mm-hmm. The pee, I clean it up when I see it, and they may clean it up. They say they feed the dogs. I see the bowl's empty. I don't know. And I just roll with it. I'm like, all right, you know what? So I end up taking care of it. But if the tables turn around, they take care of it. So it's like whatever.
It's tough. It's definitely a balancing act for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you got to be careful what you compromise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Some things it's not even worth caving in, even though it feels like it's the right thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it could be the right thing. Oh, I can make this work. I can make it. You know what I'm saying? Like, sometimes we just lie to ourselves and convince ourselves that this is even a better idea than I initially thought. Let's go through with it. Here we go. It's tough.
That's like in my head. Like, so yeah, I'm on the verge of like, I want a new vehicle. I don't want another vehicle. But then I'm like, oh, I'll get a pickup truck. Nah, that's not what I want. I definitely want a Jeep. And I'm like, in my head, I'm like trying to convince myself on why I should get a pickup truck. I'm like, I know why I should get a pickup truck. I know I could use it. I know what it's used for, whatever. But in my head, I'm like, again, this guy has it drilled in my head. Don't settle for something that you really, really want. So in the back of my mind, I'm just like, dude, don't just get a truck just to get a truck just to say you got a new car.
Yeah.
Wait till your right time. And when it comes, that means you've actually waited and it's that right time to get that vehicle.
Because then you're going to have the buyer's remorse.
Right. Because then I'm like, damn, because I should have waited. Now I got this truck and I got to wait 5 years or I'm going to be stuck in a payment that, So I just like, you know what? Let me just stick where I'm at and just wait that course.
Well, decisions like that never go away, right? You get it in every day. It's like you're reminded of it. There's certain decisions.
You're reminded of your poor decisions.
Yeah, every day, right? That's one of the things where it's always new.
Damn, I got in here.
There's certain things you can get away with, right? Like a tablet. Like, oh, man, I should have probably sprung for something with more memory or whatever. Faster processing.
Yeah.
You could deal with that, right?
You need a tablet?
But no, vehicles, big purchases like that, yeah, that's tough, man.
It is. I actually know someone in the opposite situation that they wanted a pickup truck and ended up getting a Jeep, not a Jeep Wrangler, but like a Jeep, I don't know, Compass or something like that. But it's funny because it's literally the opposite of what you're saying happened, and this dude is always talking about a truck that he doesn't have. He's like, I knew I should have got this stupid truck, man. What the hell? He's like, I get in this little thing. I don't even fit in this thing. Dude's bigger than me.
Oh, man.
Right? And he looks like he should be in a truck. And that was all he ever wanted. I mean, dude, since we were teenagers, he's talking about getting a pickup truck. And he's like, he ended up with all these years you saved up saving because you listened to other people and ended up with a Jeep Compass. Nothing wrong with a Jeep Compass. I'm just saying that wasn't what he really wanted. He he settled for whatever. And now, like you said, he kind of gets in this regret basically every day.
But that's the difference of settling and compromising. Like compromising on what you want. Maybe go for a used one that may be cheaper and whatever that's more affordable, but you get what you want, as opposed to settling on something that you don't even want at all.
If that was a factor, what somebody was brainwashing him, oh no, you should buy brand new, and maybe the price or whatever, that was probably the factor or whatever. But I mean,
it wasn't.
You still could have gone used and gotten the truck.
Well, see, that was what I turned it into. Like at our time, like bigger cabs wasn't even like a thing. It was just like he was wanting a truck.
Yeah.
Right. So then it got into his head. Someone was like, "Well, you're gonna get married. You're gonna start a family. Like, what? You're not gonna use a truck. You can't use a truck. You're very limited to whatever." And he let that get to him, knowing dang well now you can get like my truck's the inside of my truck is actually bigger than my wife's SUV inside. So we actually use my truck everywhere we go now, instead of the SUV, which was the totally opposite. The only thing that I would say is obviously when you're going grocery shopping, you want to take the SUV because although we're more comfortable in the truck, we still use a truck. We got like a little bungee cord connected from one hook to another and slide all the. But we got caught in the rain a couple times. It's those little things, but it's like, okay, well, we have another option. You made this your only option.
Yeah,
right. Yeah, right. By
listening to other people, it's not even what you really wanted. And not even so sure that was solid advice. Yeah, maybe it was. I don't know.
So with me, I got the reminder of my two little ones, Nova and Lainey. Dad, when you get in a Jeep? Dad, when you get in a Jeep? Yeah. So we park next to it. Dad, you're getting a Jeep, right? So it's like, all right. So these kids have it in their head.
Little motivation.
Yeah, and it's funny because yesterday we were at
motivation files.
We were at a plug. We were in King of Prussia. There was a softball tournament, and at the field. There was like behind the field. There was like this kind of like it looked like it was a hill where the parking lot was, and there was an actual Jeep Wrangler driving by. And Danny goes, "Oh, look at that! Look at that! Look at that!" And she's pointing at this Jeep as it's driving by. So I think it's like something like their reminder, like get a Jeep. Yeah,
get a freaking Jeep, dude. Bad advice from the younger brother. To just do it, dude. Just let's go right now.
Want to go?
I found one right.
They close in 6 minutes. Let's go. Yeah. But anyway. That we've all made compromises, but we talked about being stubborn. But is it, where does it become stubborn, and where does it become like a determined person, or is that the same thing? Because stubborn, I feel like it's like a negative thing. But if you take stubborn and define it as a determined person,
sure,
right? Now it's a positive thing.
Right. You're stubborn until you make it, and then you become determined.
They change that
and then all
description
of a sudden, the narrative
person.
changes. Correct. You're stubborn when it doesn't work, and then when it finally, whatever it is, you become successful at it. He was so determined to make it. Yeah.
Speaking of that, go ahead, Gabe.
I was gonna say, because that goes back. Maybe the difference of that is going back to the definition. Well, the first word says unreasonably.
Yeah, unreasonably opposite.
So you're unreasonably stubborn.
That's true. Unreasonably.
That's what I was gonna say.
True.
Stubborn is like you're set ways, but there's no reason why you're locked in on that.
Right.
Like you made a decision, you just I'm gonna do it no matter what.
Right.
Even though like everything's fun against you. I mean, you can compromise in certain aspects of it, but yeah, when you just go gung ho for no reason.
So is stubbornness a component of achieving your goals? Kind of going back to what Manny was saying.
Yeah,
at an extent, certain extent.
Can.
Depends. It depends whose I guess whose lens you're viewing it from, because for you're not being stubborn, you're being determined.
Right.
But for your spouse, who's let's say you're dumping all this money into this project, for your spouse, who's like having to make ends meet, you're determined, and she's like you're stubborn. So it depends what lens you're viewing it through.
For sure.
Maybe they don't see the tail end of your project. They're like, all right, you're blowing all this money. It doesn't look like it's ending anytime soon.
I'm a dream chaser, and someone's music. You're a loser.
Yeah, right.
I just saw someone like, dude, if you're trying to make a mixtape and you're in your mid-30s, give it up.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
And that was literally someone's Facebook post. And I was like, wow. But, you can ask someone who's really determined and really wants to make it in the music industry and wants to be a rapper or whatever.
Sure.
Are they a dream chaser? Are they just not letting go? Or is it like that's like a weird in between thing?
Wasn't that like Simon Cowell? He didn't make success till he was like in his 35 years old.
Well, I don't know if it was chasing a dream. I think it was more specifically to the rap thing that this person was making the comment towards.
That's true. I mean, because that's being unreasonable at that point.
Sure.
There's not many rappers at 35, right, that are like just coming out,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
If you're 35, that means you've been in it for a while and you're still popular. But
yeah,
there's not. I don't know of any rappers like, oh, he came out at 35, and everybody is like, nah, that doesn't happen. So yeah,
I mean, comebacks,
right?
Sure, and stuff like that can happen. Obviously, there's examples of that, but it gets there's less success rates as it.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's
that go on.
Anything could obviously happen, and there's very limited, examples, but there are examples. But looking at it at a point, I guess, from an investor standpoint, and you're not indie, and you're going and looking for a record or a label deal, whatever.
Sure.
At 35, they're saying that you have these, and I'm thinking that the post was more to the rap thing, not music industry. Because obviously there's singers who are 60 and you could sing your butt off. I mean, it's absolutely fantastic. It's beautiful to the ears. But I guess rap's a totally another specimen, right? And I'm not even sure what the intent or what that even meant of that post. But I was like, wow, that was like that was an intense
personal
post. Yeah, probably.
But that's also a general sweeping statement anyway, too.
Exactly. Millennials, it's like, and then whatever comes after that, it's like, oh gosh. So stubborn, positive or negative? And what's the relationship to one's ego and pride?
But I think it goes back to
so now if I said ego and pride, now it could be a negative thing, right?
Sure.
If I say you're a dream chaser and you're determined, now it's like this whole other
looks good
thing. Yeah. It depends. I guess it's situational, but our egos and our pride have definitely interfered with very solid and sound decisions that went the wrong way.
Sure.
There should have been solid and basically easy decisions, and your stubbornness, like, nope, I'm still going to go for it. I'm still getting it. I'm still, I'm still going for my MBA. That was me. I'm like, screw that. I am not fit for this. That's why I say in my head, oh my gosh, this is awful. Like, what am I doing to myself? And now it's like the stubbornness, like, no, now you got finished. You got to do it. You know what I mean? Now you're in it to win it.
But for you, that's different, right? Like you in the beginning, maybe you took 3 classes, right? And as opposed to just saying, all right, I'm just gonna take 3 classes till I'm finished, you've now changed the game up a little bit. Maybe you're taking one course, you're going to slow it down, and you've changed your expectations. So now you're being reasonable about it. So you're still determined and not being stubborn, knowing damn well 3 classes wasn't going to work.
Yeah, I mean, he's heck physically saw me have like a anxiety attack.
Oh yeah,
literally.
But that's the difference. Yes, you trying to constantly do 3 classes, overwhelming yourself, and that's straight up stubborn. And
yeah, so if I went through that experience and then the winter season comes and I doing the same thing to myself, that's an asshole.
You didn't learn your lesson.
Yeah. But knowing that and then reeling back and saying, I'm going to take 1 class, but that's manageable and doable. And it may take a little longer.
Right? That's the compromise.
The compromise is not finishing as fast as I thought I was going to finish.
Yes. Right. But then once you finally get it, that's a point of pride that you can say, I did this, I accomplished this.
Was there a time when you were too stubborn for your own good? I feel like that's every day. I mean, I don't know. I'm sure. Yes, obviously yes. The answer is yes. I just trying to come up with an example. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of things that was just like, oh gosh, why didn't I just listen to somebody, or even just like purchases that don't have to be like high expensive things. It's like little things. I mean, obviously I've gotten way better, but I think maybe when I was younger, a lot of that, more of it came to just out of ignorance and just not knowing. Doing and saying and operating the modus operandi that was just very limited, I think. So a lot of stubbornness and ego was tossed around, thinking that I knew everything. There's this weird age where we hit that we think we literally know everything.
I'll tell you what it is for me. It was late teens, early 20s.
Yeah.
You couldn't tell me anything.
Yeah,
I moved out. I didn't even really move out. I went to college and lived in a dorm in which my parents paid for, but I moved out and I was on my own. Man. And they couldn't tell me anything. Like, come on, Mom. You don't know what I've been through. It's like, meanwhile, she's raised kids, bought a house, mortgages. But I really, in my heart of hearts, I really felt like, what are you going to tell me that I don't already know? Yeah. And then, obviously, as you get older, you start to realize, like, I told you. And then you're like, yeah, you're right. And I was too stubborn between, like, 18 and 23. Where I was just like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, I was the same way.
Ignorant.
Yeah, dude, mine was ignorant. I think mine was from like
yesterday
10 till today. I can't. I was at a point where I was just like stubborn. Nobody could tell me nothing, and I didn't care. There's times where this one, he'll tell me, he's like, dude, you can't act like that. You're gonna get your ass beat in school. I'm like, they ain't gonna do nothing to me. Just being cocky and arrogant about it, and thank God I didn't get my ass because I didn't know how to fight.
But that's the ego just getting in the way. And actually, us not knowing how to, the ego's not a bad thing. It's us improperly using it. Yeah. That's where and a lot of times that just comes from either guidance or experience, the know-how, how to actually manipulate the ego could be a very good thing if it's driven in a specific way. Right. When it's driven in a specific way, such as, in politics, and you're making law for an entire country, or you're making major decisions for an entire country, and based off something you said 10 years ago, and now you're only making a decision because of something you said 10 years ago, your ego is now in the way, and it's interfering with a very sound and a decision that should be made that's not being made because something else is in the way. Mm-hmm. And it's your ego or your pride or whatever. And the opposite is true, where you can drive that and you can be like, my ego, I can use that energy that I wanted to say, and like, you know what? In the past, I would stick to my guns, but this time I'm gonna make the right decision, and I pride myself off that. So now it just got turned to something totally different, right? Yeah. It's driven in a different way. Right. Same decision, just driven in driven by the same thing, just totally different direction. Yeah. All right, so just wrapping things up with dad life stuff. Are your kids stubborn? And if so, what is your reaction or teaching methodology for working through their quote hard-headedness?
Oh man, for me it's always experience, right? Yeah. You always do. Okay, don't do that. Why? And they always ask why, and you give them the reason. And they do it anyway. Yeah. All right. And now I've got to point. Okay. You'll figure it out. All right. And then when it happens, especially my young one, she's always jumping. Now she's jumping. She's in the jumping phase, or she's throwing herself around. I'm like, you're gonna get hurt. Nuh-uh, it's because I'm like, all right. And she'll finally like run into the wall, and she'll look at me like, I'm not hurt, and I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
no, and she's sitting right where she's supposed to now. So experience, for the most part, as long as it doesn't hurt them.
Sure.
Experience is what I kind of lead the way.
I'm just scared like right now with Ava. She's a good kid, but she's gonna hit 12, 13, hit those teen years where that's where a lot of the stubbornness comes out.
Yeah.
Verbally too, they're not scared to show it. I mean, not all kids, but like that's where I'm
generally speaking.
Yeah, I feel like that's where the test is gonna come in the next few years.
Yeah.
Of her stubbornness or whatever you want to call it.
So how are you gonna approach it? I mean, if you know it's coming, what's your thought process?
Well, I'm trying to like prepare myself the best way I can, but without like overreacting, because I know it's gonna come as soon as it comes. I'm like, I told you, like. Yeah. Just try to like approach it as it comes,
right?
But mentally prepare myself, so I'm not like freaking.
Yeah, you're not gonna lose your marbles.
Yeah, go bananas. Like,
yeah.
There was a podcast years ago. I don't even know if it was even a podcast or a radio station. I was still living with my parents at the time. This is like 10 years ago. That it was talking about mindset, right? And this woman, I don't know if she was the host or a guest, whatever. She was talking about the challenges of raising a confident child. Mm-hmm. And I totally, obviously, could not relate to any of this, but I understood what she was saying or trying to say.
Yeah.
She said, here's a challenge. You're telling your kid when they're at school, stand up for yourself, be confident. Mm-hmm. When you make a decision, stick with that. Then you catch that on the back end when this kid's at home and in front of people, in front of, quote, company, and they're basically being, smart asses in front of you. Hey, but you're the one who told them to be confident, stand up for what they believe in. You're like, don't do that. I believe I can do that. I can do that. And now you're standing there like, I taught this kid to be confident. And she was talking about the struggles of raising a confident child. And now I could see myself getting in predicaments this way because I'm always speaking about being positive and being confident to my son. Obviously way young right now, and who knows what it'll turn into, hopefully, whatever. But I don't know, and I just thought of that right now. That was something that was buried in my mind 10 years ago, and I don't know who said what that made that. Oh, Goose was talking about Ava, and that just triggered my mind. Like, well, okay, now I'm trying to, don't be no schlack, at school or wherever you are, and be respectful, but be confident in who you are and what you're doing. It's like backlash.
I'm having that situation now. So my son defends himself verbally.
Yeah.
And he processes information and sees his point of view as being, he's stubborn in that sense. He's like, no, this is why I'm right.
Right.
And I just tell him, I shut him down. No, be quiet, listen, because this is what it is. Mm-hmm. And to what you're talking about, I feel like I'm stymie. What's the word I want to use here? Yes, I'm stifling his development in that. So I want him to have that type of verbal confrontation or discussion with somebody who's a peer of his. But if I continue to beat him down and tell him no, just listen, it's almost like the beaten dog thing. Like subconsciously he's going to be like, all right, I'm just going to give in because that's what I'm supposed to do. Yeah. Meanwhile, I think that's a great trait, just not with me. Yeah, you know what I mean. It's difficult to find that balance for me and for him. Yeah, because I want him to express himself. But like respectfully, because it almost comes off ignorant to me. Wow, I'll punch you right in your mouth. Meanwhile, if he's out there and I'm listening to him, argue with his friend, somebody made fun of him, said he had a sleeve on for baseball. He's like, dude, you're 9 years old and you have a sleeve, right? He didn't back down. He's like, dude, you got 2 wristbands on. What makes you any better than me? And I was in the back. I was like, boom, drop the mic. You ain't got nothing to say for that, right? But if he were to do that to me, I'd be like, don't talk to me like that. So there is definitely a fine line to allow, even as a parent, like, don't take everything as a disrespect. Allow them to kind of be themselves. Hard, easier said than done. But you bringing that up just like brought that to my mind, like to the forefront. Like, man, that's
my 4-year-old James said something to me the other day. I forget specifically what it was, but I just remember my response. It was something with, I don't know, one of the little kids. I don't know what it was. And what he said, I said, I understand what you're saying, but your response is a situational response. Meaning, in that specific case, you talking back makes sense. In this specific case, and I'm not saying it's all the time, it doesn't make sense. It's not the same rules. There's different rules. Mm-hmm. And he's staring at me, and Cal's like, oh, gosh, here he goes, a complex explanation. Yeah. But I feel like if I talk to him in that manner now, and I know he probably didn't pick up all of that, right? But I still try to break it down in bits and pieces, because I didn't get mad at him for saying what he said. I said, no. you're right. I told him he was right. I said, I get what you're saying, but that was a totally different situation. Just hear me out. Listen to what I'm saying. Blah, 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 blah. In this situation, we would handle it this way. I'm not saying that you're wrong, and I see what you're saying. And does it always sound that good or come out that nicely? Because it does come off a certain way, and your ego then flares up, and all of a sudden your face turns beet red, and you're like, oh, you're not going to challenge me. Not in my house. And you get that. Versus, is that worth it, or is it worth more of the explanation or the breakdown? I don't know. It could be either way. I mean, I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying sometimes one's right, sometimes maybe you probably could have went the other way.
Yeah. Again, all situational. But yeah. Explain. Continue to explain all the time. That's how you do. Break it down, that complex stuff. They listen. They process. They get it. Yep. They may look at you like you're a dodo at that particular moment, but the older they get, those are things that you've dropped nuggets and they'll come back out.
We talk about all the time about life after death. And the only reason why it comes up is because of my son. He brings it up. So I was trying to explain to him that if we saw a cardinal or butterfly, that I say that's my dad in spirit coming back saying that he's around in the spiritual realm, that he's watching over me, guiding us in some level. And so now James was taking that literal, and I don't expect anything less than that. He's saying, look, that's Papa, Papa. And you see a little butterfly or whatever, or a cardinal. Papa, look, it's Papa. There he is. He's visiting us. Dad, are you going to die? And he starts asking questions that. So I said, of course, bud. We all end up, leaving the earth, but we just don't know our time. He's like, yeah, we go to another level. Yeah, I was like, we express ourselves differently. A 4-year-old is basically talking about like life after death and is processing it because I had said those terms in hundreds of little conversations that we had.
Yep.
And now he sees a butterfly. He's understanding like that's not really you. That's just you in a different way. So he's like, so that this happened today. He's like, so are you gonna come back as a butterfly? This dude's talking about reincarnation and has no idea what he's talking about, but he's talking
he
about
understood it though.
Yeah, saying that we come back.
But you're not hiding away from those conversations.
But I'm not hiding away. I'm like, I don't know.
So if it comes up in the future, it's not something that he's afraid to talk about.
And then I have fun with it because I was like, I don't know, maybe I'll come back as a flower. And he starts cracking up laughing. He's like, yeah. And then starts watching a cartoon and starts talking about like the cartoon or whatever. Like there's these sparks of like an adult comes out of him, and then also it's totally still 4-year-old because he's like, well, Dad, I gotta poop. You know what I mean? It's hilarious. All right, so there you have it, folks. We like to wrap things up by quotes, and the first one is by Anthony J. D'Angelo. Never let your persistence and passion turn into stubbornness and ignorance. And the second one is by John C. Maxwell. When you are full of pride on the inside, it makes you stiff, stubborn, and creates strife with others. All right, so there you have it, folks. Stubbornness. In this episode, the crew talks about their most important compromises learned throughout their lives. We cover topics that range from pride, our egos, persistence in life, goal attainment, tips for the stubborn person, and much more. We wrap the episodes up with quotes from Anthony J. D'Angelo and John C. Maxwell. Awesome. Guys, thanks again for joining us. The Rotated Views podcast was produced for self-development purposes. Huge shout out to our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by the Blessed Lifestyle brand. That is BL3SSED.com. Also sponsored by The Motivation Files Unleashed. This motivational mixtape will be your fuel for success. Available on all platforms. Guys, don't forget to visit the website, JimmyLeeVelez.com. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Rotated Views. If you have any inquiries or questions, email us at info@JimmyLeeVelez.com. On behalf of myself and the rest of the crew, we wish you massive success. Stay blessed.